Good morning, everyone. Wow, that song kind of says it all. Like, I really didn't need to do this talk today. Um, and it just, I don't know, for me, it's encouraging, it's empowering, it's amazing to think that we do live in community and that we have a part to share, as well as all the gifts that we receive as being a part of community. The topic today is communal uncertainty, and we're going to hear a lot about that, and it will take on a whole different look, I think, feel from what we might think of when we hear the word uncertainty. So today we're going to continue to explore more deeply all that we can discover as we explore this topic of divine doubt, which is our theme for May. And we have learned up until this point some really unique and powerful truths about the subject of doubt and the valuable role it plays in each of our lives. Even though the word itself can have a negative connotation, but we're learning that it means a lot more than we thought. So in the first Sunday of the month, Reverend Allison introduced us to this meaning of divine doubt as she opened up the door to a fresh new way of looking at doubt itself, the very concept of doubt. And as I was saying, a word that often has negative connotations, and it might even bring up fear or worry in our minds. But Reverend Alice gently reminded us that doubt can actually open the door to further consideration and awareness, whereas certainty may shut the door. If you're absolutely certain about something, I know this is the way it is and it's no other way, then we really have shut the door. Whereas doubt says, well, maybe there is another way of looking at this. Maybe there's another side to the story, etc., etc. And I think we all can see how this plays out in our lives. So when we bring our doubts, when we have the courage to bring our doubts out into the open and look at them, this can lead us deeper and give us the needed strength and courage that we need to move ahead with our lives. So it's some good stuff. In Debbie's presentation regarding our doubting selves, she encouraged us to dare to move beyond our self-created boundaries, which actually doubt does. It creates false boundaries. They aren't really real, but we think they are. And once we move beyond those, then we can accept ourselves just as we are, which we know from the CSL teachings that we are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way we are. And we might even start to ask ourselves, am I willing to share my doubting self? Am I willing to be vulnerable enough to let others know that we doubt something? And is it okay? It seems to me that by accepting the fact that we sometimes feel doubtful about an issue, then it gives us the impetus to look more closely at what's going on, even as we give ourselves permission to move beyond that doubt. So there's some, steps involved in doing that. Well, last Sunday, Reverend Alice challenged us to explore how we might collectively share our doubts. In other words, we don't just keep them home and don't talk about them, but we have the courage to collectively share them with others as we move forward in our journey to healing what needs healing, both in our own lives and in the larger world with billions of others. And we're going to talk much more about that today because we're talking about communal doubt, communal uncertainty, and the importance of that. So let's get on with it and talk about it. I'd like to share a quote, and this came from some of our CSL notes, and it's a quote from an author that a lot of us are familiar with, Howard Thurman, and he wrote lots of books and was a great writer and spiritual teacher. And here's what Howard Thurman had to say. The moving finger of God in human history points ever in the same direction. There must be community. And we're talking about community today. Always in the collective conscience and in the private will, this intent appears and reappears like some fleeting ghost. It is a fact that humankind fails again and again, but the sense of not being mistaken in the fundamental intention never deserts the final purpose. The intention is always there, or the judgment that is passed on all social behavior. He goes on to say, when the hunger in a person's heart merges with what seems to be the fundamental intent of life, which is communion with God, the Creator, it is not only possible but urgent. The hunger of the heart, which is part of the givenness of God, becomes one with the givenness of God as expressed in the world of nature and in human history. Now, this is a lot to absorb, but just to simplify it, I think we can focus on the truth that humankind, is forever bound together in community. And all that we think, feel, wonder, or worry about are shared in the collective unconscious. And I know that Reverend Alice talked about this last week to a great extent, that there is this collective unconscious that goes on that we're often not aware of. But when we think back maybe to our childhood and how our parents believed, or the neighbors or the teachers, we picked up on a lot of these beliefs, and we have lived with them in many cases and maybe haven't examined them. But once we start to examine them, then we get a better idea of what's going on. So today we're going to look at this subject of this communal uncertainty with three different discussion points that have come to us in our notes from CSL. And the first one is communal wholeness. We are reminded that the divine in each of us is constantly pulling us toward community. We're created to share the whole of our experiences with each other. There's a story that comes from ancient Mexico that for me beautifully paints the truth about the value and importance of honoring the communities that we live in as one vital family. The name of the story is, and it will be told in English, not in Spanish as it was written, it's called The Woman Who Outshone the Sun. It's a beautiful story. I found the book with the story. It's both in Spanish and English some years ago, and it was retold by an author from the state of Oaxaca. So I'm going to share this story today and be thinking about communal certainty and uncertainty as we share the story, and then we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards. So again, the woman who outshone the sun. And here's a couple of paintings of what she looked like. Well, the day that Lucia Zenteno arrived, everyone in the village was astonished. No one knew where she came from, yet they all saw that she was amazingly beautiful, and that she brought thousands of dancing butterflies and brightly colored flowers on her skirts. She walked softly, yet with quiet dignity, her long, unbraided hair flowing behind her. A loyal iguana walked at her side. No one knew who she was, but they did know that nothing shone as brightly as Lucia Zenteno. Now, some people said that Lucia Zenteno outshone the sun. Others said that her glorious hair seemed to block out the light. There used to be a river that ran through this town, almost the same one that runs there now. And people said that when Lucia Zenteno went there to bathe, the river fell in love with her. The water rose from its bed and began to flow through her shining black hair. When Lucia finished bathing, she would sit by the river and comb out her hair with a comb made from the wood of the mesquite tree. And when she did, the water, the fishes, and the otters would flow out of her hair and return to the river once more. The old people of the village said that although Lucia was different from them, she should be honored and treated with respect. She understood the ways of nature, they said. But some people did not listen to the elders. They were afraid of Lucia's powers, which they did not understand. And so they refused to answer Lucia's greetings or offer their friendship. They called her cruel names and spied on her day and night. Lucia did not return the meanness of the people. She kept to herself and continued to walk with her head held high. Her quiet dignity angered some of the people. They whispered that Lucia must be trying to harm them. People became more afraid of Lucia, and so they treated her more cruelly. Finally, they drove her from the village. Lucia went down to the river one last time to say goodbye. As always, the water rose to greet her and began to flow through her glorious hair. But this time, when she tried to comb the river out of her hair, the river would not leave her. And so when Lucia Zenteno left the village, the river and the fishes and the otters went with her, leaving only a dry, winding riverbed, a serpent of sand where the water had been. Everyone saw that Lucia was leaving and that the river, the fishes, and the otters were leaving with her. The people were filled with despair. They had never imagined that their beautiful river would ever leave them, no matter what they did. Where once there had been green trees and cool breezes, now no more rain fell. No birds sang, no otters played. The people and their animals suffered from thirst. People began to understand, as never before, how much the river, the fishes, the otters, even the trees and birds had meant to the village. They began to understand how much the river had loved Lucia Zenteno. The elders said that everyone must search for Lucia and beg her forgiveness. Some people did not want to. They were too afraid. But when the drought continued, everyone finally agreed to follow the elders' advice. And so the whole village set out in search of Lucia. After many days of walking, the people found the iguana cave where Lucia had gone to seek refuge. Lucia was waiting for them, but they could not see her face. She had turned her back to the people. At first, no one dared say a word, and then two children called out, "Lucia, we have come to ask your forgiveness. Please have mercy on us and return our river." She turned and looked at the people. She saw their frightened, tired faces, and she felt compassion for them. There she is. At last she spoke. "I will ask the river to return to you," she said. "But just as the river gives water to all who are thirsty, no matter who they are, so you must learn to treat everyone with kindness, even those who seem different from you." The people remembered how they had treated Lucia, and they hung their heads in shame. Seeing that the people were truly sorry for what they had done, Lucia returned with them to the village and began to comb out her hair. She combed out the water, she combed out the fishes and the otters, and she kept on combing until the river had returned once more to where it belonged. The people were overjoyed to have their river again. They poured water over themselves and over their animals. They jumped into the river and they laughed and they cried with happiness. Well, in all the excitement, no one noticed at first that Lucia had disappeared again. When the children asked the elders where she had gone, the elders replied that Lucia had not really left them. Though they would not be able to see her, she would always be there, guiding and protecting them, helping them to live with love and understanding in their hearts. So clearly, I love this story. And what I see there is that this communal uncertainty was what brought these people together. They were uncertain. They were afraid of the unknown, what they didn't understand. And once that was pointed out to them, and once they realized that they actually had the power to change things, what they needed to do was see what was going on, to apologize and move on, and then move on as a community into taking some action, which they did do. They sought her. They saw that doubt and fear had been causing them to act, and that the healing would take place when they began to be compassionate and tolerant towards someone who was different. So I think that this story really can invite us to live and think and love and act as a community together that focuses on the whole picture, not just the little part that we're afraid of, or we don't understand, or we judge, or whatever, whatever we do, that we see ourselves as vital to the larger world, the world we love, cherish, and we need to protect and preserve if we're really wanting to live in a world that works for everyone. Excuse me, not just for a few people, but for all of us. Well, the second point we're looking at today is pulled together by doubt. Pulled together by doubt. And this might sound kind of dubious when we first hear it, but let's look at this from a fresh point of view. The notes from CSL say this: doubt, stress, and need are all human experiences that inspire us to create and maintain community in the first place. If we think about ancient peoples and the stories we know from history or from archaeologists, digging stuff up, could see that community was formed in order to share the basics of life, to share water, food, shelter, protection from danger, enemies, the elements, wild animals, and more. That this is how communities were formed. And in today's world, which is quite different, but it's often our emotional needs that pull us together. For example, if we live far from family, then we often seek communities that share our interests, give us mental, emotional, social support, whether it's a church, whether it's a social organization, or people that get engaged in hobbies and sports, and you name it, hundreds of ways to form communities. And we have support when we change our minds about things. For example, at one point in our lives, and it's certainly true for me and maybe most of you, that I began to doubt the teachings, of the church of my childhood. And that can lead us to explore the vast world of spiritual beliefs and organizations that then open the door to a whole new world, a world we didn't know, I didn't know existed before. It was my sister that introduced me to unity, and from there moved into New Thought and went, a breath of fresh air. This is awesome. So again, starting with this collective doubt, then moving as we become members of a community of like-minded people who once had the same kinds of doubts, and then we can make the changes that are needed for society. So in our world today, there are countless ways that we can choose from when we want to join with others to make positive differences in our world. We begin by doubting the status quo, and then we can move on from there. The This made me think about the legions of women, both in this country and also in England, who were drawn together by the communal doubt that women would ever get the right to vote. The doubt that women should have the right to vote, that they were whatever, smart enough, clever enough, who knows. But these legions of people are remarkable examples of how that doubt could lead to positive societal changes and improvements. At least most of us think it's an improvement. Their stories are hopeful and frustrating. They're filled with danger, despair, occasional violence, especially in England. I've read some things. It got pretty violent there. And there was personal loss, there was suffering. But all of this contributed to creating world-altering changes that started with the doubt, should women have the right to vote? Well, the third point today, coming from our CSL, just want to be sure I have my notes in the right place. Yep. Has to do with curiosity and urgency as a collective call to action. So both curiosity and a sense of urgency. So again, our notes say this: as we in the Centers for Spiritual Living continue working toward a world that works for everyone, we may experience doubts, of course, both about the possibility itself and what it means for us to show up in new and creative ways. Doubting the possibility of avoiding a climate catastrophe, example, may help inspire thinkers and movers to find new solutions to old problems. It seems to me that it only takes a few citizens who are open to seeing things differently to inspire others to take up the cause and bring about positive changes. This reminds me of Margaret Mead's most well-known affirmation: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I mean, I've always loved that. And it's so true. And it's been true, and it continues to be true, that you get this, might start with a small group, people who are committed to make a change, and it happens. Today, we see this shift from doubt to action in every corner of the planet. We know the amazing story of that young Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. She gained world attention when she was only 16 in year 2018 for her solo climate strike outside the Swedish parliament. One brave girl. Her actions inspired Global Fridays for Future movement, with hundreds of thousands of young people all over the world joining the strikes that she had started. So she's credited with raising global awareness about climate change, particularly among young people. I have no doubt that this young woman's passion for change has moved thousands of world citizens from doubt to action, and continues to do so today. At this moment in history, there are serious doubts about our ability to overcome divisiveness in every corner of the planet. Is it possible that as we humans recognize and realize these doubts, healing might begin to happen? Sadly enough, it sometimes appears that it takes a tragedy in order to awaken citizens of the need to move from doubt to action. This past January, we saw the tragic events in Minneapolis when 2 citizens were killed by ICE agents during protests intended to protect immigrants from violence and needless suffering. Well, regardless of one's political views, I think we can say that events like this truly shift us from doubt to action. Hopefully, action in a direction that moves us toward a world that works for all of us, regardless of race, social status, or country of origin. As students of the science of mind, we're often reminded that Ernest Holmes passionately believed and taught that we must remain open at the top. I think that's what we're talking about. He invited us to expand our perspective with these following words. Here's what Holmes said. Now we must open the doors of our consciousness and expand and no longer think in terms of the backyard, but in the terms of the infinite universe. I had never seen that quote before, and I'm just blown away by it. It's so, like, current, such current thinking. We're reminded by Dr. Holmes that indeed we are world citizens who have a responsibility to see ourselves in that global light of awareness. We aren't simply citizens of San Jose or Campbell or Morgan Hill or whatever city or state we live in. We aren't just citizens of the US or even North America. We are all citizens of the world, of planet Earth. We have come to Earth in order to be part of the larger picture, to live, love, experience, celebrate, and act as the world citizens that we truly are. We do keep our minds open at the top. We all have many doubts as we travel through our hours, days, weeks, months, years. What a gift it is to realize that all the doubts of each of us are shared by numerous other world citizens. This communal uncertainty can be a source of comfort, shared frustration, and often sadness and grief. But there's so much power in the awareness of shared doubt. It brings to my mind some friends of mine who belong to a widows group called Hole in the Heart. These women understand doubt at a deeper level than some of us have yet to experience. I'm thinking that all of them must have asked themselves the question, how can I manage without my husband in my life? They must have been filled with painful doubts about how they might carry on in a world unknown to them. It would seem that the collective doubt of these brave women is the very thing that holds them together and gives them the strength and courage to move on with their lives. And we have all had doubts. And all of these doubts have served our world in some way or another. It'd be interesting, and this was suggested in the notes, that we might journal about some of this and ask these questions. How have our doubts served the world? And how can this be happening to me, to us, and what can we do about it? I doubt if I'm strong enough, smart enough, brave enough. We have those thoughts. And when we discover that others have these same thoughts, then this is when action can begin, and healing, of course. Well, our notes for today offer these powerful concluding thoughts that I want to share with all of you. And then I'm going to share a small affirmation that comes from this month's Science of Mind magazine. Rather than assuming something is wrong when doubt arises, sharing our collective doubts in community is a pathway to building a more just and thoughtful world. All things that have been created by humanity began by seeing a need. And a doubt is just that, a need that one is not certain how it can be fulfilled. We must be brave and vulnerable together in our doubt and see it as an opportunity for curiosity and wonder. Now I'll share this affirmation. Today, I embrace my full humanness and my full divinity. I embrace divine doubt, knowing it leads me deeper into the holy light of spirit. And so it is. So we can move into a short little treatment, and that will be good. So as we've come together today to share, to learn, and to experience divine doubt as the gift that it truly is, we take some time to be grateful. Some time to be grateful that we have chosen this time to be here on this planet with each other, to live, to celebrate, to experience challenges together, and to succeed. We are so grateful for all of this, for being a part of this wonderful community. We give thanks and we release our word in great gratitude, knowing that it is all perfect. And so it is.